I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask a question. Is a game not entitled to a great opening sequence? No, says BioShock 2.
First impressions are everything. These days, movies are 2 hours long, so if a movie doesn't immediately convince you that it's worth your time, it's easier than ever to just click away and watch something else. This is why your opening sequence matters. When you sit down to watch some random slasher movie and then this happens, it's the same for video games. The difference is that while a movie is like 2 hours, a video game is,
You'll never sing it come back.
Gamers need that big juicy hook, that worm at the end of the line. Games combine all visual elements of film and television while giving players control over a character. This is not only a major time sink, but it's also asking players to work towards something. The Last of Us, Uncharted 2, Fallout New Vegas, all of these are long, story-based games, and all of their entries do an excellent job of laying the groundwork and often starting out with a bang.
But one game intro blows the rest out of the water.
BioShock was released in 2008 to massive critical and commercial success. It's remembered for its dense atmosphere, unique setting, mind-bending story, and surprisingly complex commentary on philosophy, agency, free will, and even the gaming medium itself. As well as its kooky characters.
And the devil says, sure thing, Mr. Fontaine.
It's also notable for its legendary opening sequence, considered to be a masterclass in visual and interactive storytelling.
Its sequel, BioShock 2, was released only 2 years later and was met with mixed critical reviews. Many praised it for its improved gameplay, but others considered it to be a watered-down version of the original. Returning to Rapture so soon, with less time to craft an engaging narrative, also just left a bad taste in many players' mouths. A common complaint is that the game has a hard time getting itself going. However, both games were extremely well received and sold a ton of copies. So why exactly do players enjoy BioShock 1's opening more so than BioShock 2's? Why is our first introduction to Rapture so much more effective than our second?
If I didn't care.
BioShock starts in an airplane. It's a universal experience you can instantly imagine yourself in. Then your plane crashes into the fucking ocean. Title card, BioShock. You wake up actively drowning. Luggage and plane parts sink past you as you force yourself upward, fighting for survival. When you do breach the surface, you're surrounded by flames, but in the distance, a lighthouse. This is when the player gains control of the character. This right here is when the game starts, and the stakes are made immediately clear. Get busy swimming or get busy dying. As you climb the lighthouse, you start asking questions. Why is there a lighthouse in the middle of the ocean? What purpose would it serve? Instead of answering them, the game just goes, who's this guy? I don't know, we'll come back to it. You follow the sound of an old-timey radio into some sort of elevator, and oh shit, now you're trapped and it's a fucking small world and you're plunging leagues deeper into the ocean you just narrowly escaped with your life. Then that guy from earlier turns into your fucking dad and starts lecturing you on taxes and shit. Oh, I'm gonna make my own libertarian paradise where the government can't take away my child slaves and it's also gonna look like this. So this guy foams at the mouth about cancel culture or whatever. Meanwhile, you're cruising through this insane environment, just taking it all in. The music is eerie, the city is beautiful, and the atmosphere is thick. Finally, you're greeted by a man who is just immediately disemboweled, and then his murderer tries to kill you too. I'm not going out there. Meanwhile, BioShock 2 just starts with a 3-minute cutscene. You walk up to a hole in the wall, which turns out to be a little girl dispenser. She calls you daddy, so you follow her, and then, honey, what are you doing? Is that blood? Your vampire daughter leads you to a party, but again, you're not actually in control because it's just a cutscene. Your appearance startles a guy. This is an efficient detail that establishes your relationship to this society. You are tolerated, but you are a monster. Then your kid gets mugged, so you jump into dad mode. Yeah! And these dudes are actually like junkie wizards, and then some chick is like, this is literally my daughter, not yours, kill yourself. And then you just sort of do. Time jump 10 years and you wake up and you're expected to rescue the daughter you have no attachment to from a woman you don't know anything about. It's not incompetent, it's just less engaging. Little Sisters, Big Daddies, Andrew Ryan, Atoms, Splicers, Plasmids, it's trying to establish all this important information just in case you didn't play the first game, but it's also doing it as efficiently as possible just in case you did. All of this is instead of crafting a unique and memorable experience of its own.
If I didn't care.
BioShock introduces us to two major characters in the first 5 minutes. You remember this guy? You remember this guy? Yeah, this guy right here. This is Andrew Ryan, the objectivist leader and de facto king of Rapture, and he's also the first thing you see when you first enter the lighthouse. Here Ryan argues against traditional authority figures like kings and gods, but he looms over you with this authoritative, godlike presence, almost if he's contradicting the very beliefs that he's pushing so heavily.
The parasite expects the doctor to heal them for free.
When you enter the bathysphere, the door is sealed, and the villain, not the game, traps the player in a cutscene. Player agency is being limited by other characters in the story, giving the player a direct relationship to those other characters.
Fuck you, Andrew, let me out of here!
On our taxi ride to Rapture, we're introduced to the antagonist's philosophy naturalistically, in the form of a helpful welcoming video that anyone would see when visiting the city. It's kind of like a brochure you'd find at a rest stop on all what goes down in Knoxville, Tennessee, brother! Yeah! It's world building, but it's also laying the groundwork for the thematic questions at the heart of the game.
The sequence ends with the introduction of Atlas, your main officer and companion. He rescues you and gives you instructions throughout the rest of the game. He opens the door to your bathysphere, giving you freedom, but also taking away the safety of your enclosure. This immediately establishes how he'll help you by putting you in harm's way, a detail that becomes pretty significant later on. BioShock 2 technically introduces 3 characters. Eleanor, who's given no characterization beyond daughter figure, Subject Delta, father figure, and Sophia Lamb. Unlike Andrew Ryan, we don't know Sophia's ideologies. All we know is that the two of you are locked in an excessively violent custody battle. It's trying to establish emotional stakes, but it's very base level with its presentation of the game's main conflict.
And what makes my head go round?
The moment you enter the lighthouse, you're met with a distinct hum of music. A violin pierces the dead air and comforts you as it guides you to the bathysphere nestled in the depths of the lighthouse. You may recognize this song as Beyond the Sea, originally written by Charles Trenet. According to musicology professor William Gibbons, the song suggests that should Jack only take a trip through the bathysphere, passing beyond the sea, he'll reach the end of his journey, Rapture. The song is a promise of a better life, one full of love and success. Although this version of the song is an instrumental, players who have heard the song before will understand that this is a sort of siren song, beckoning you to descend further into the darkness. Beyond the Sea then transitions into one of the game's original songs, Welcome to Rapture, whose violins crescendo to the underwater city's big reveal. BioShock 2's use of licensed music is much more surface level. Just like BioShock's Beyond the Sea, BioShock 2 used the song Dream by the Pied Pipers and the Ernie Feliz Quartet to emphasize the movement of Subject Delta as he passes through the New Year's Eve party. It meshes well with Subject Delta's movement, but its lyrics and placement lack the narrative purpose and lull that Beyond the Sea has.
Let's talk imagery, because baby, BioShock's got it. As soon as you awaken from your plane crash, special attention is given to this pearl necklace as it sinks past you, symbolically returning home to the ocean after some time away on the surface. This seemingly unimportant detail actually foreshadows the protagonist's origins and how he may not be such an outsider to the city after all.
The city itself is flooded with allusions to other works, more specifically the works of Ayn Rand, the mother of objectivist thought. Ayn Rand, Andrew Ryan, get it? Rapture's skyscrapers are adorned with statues reminiscent of the Atlas statue in front of the Rockefeller building. But according to gaming journalist Brittany Kuhn, the statue is actually directly referencing Rand's 2 most popular novels, Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. She points to their metallic 2-dimensional look and chiseled physique, as well as how they raise their hands to the sky as the rays of the sun shines from behind. BioShock also takes direct inspiration from the 1927 film Metropolis. Besides the narrative parallels of the working man rising up against an authoritarian state, BioShock also directly mirrors the utopian architecture present in the film. Elevated walkways, interconnected buildings, and pointed skyscrapers pile over one another as we descend further and further into the fallen city. Now pay close attention. You think this is all set dressing, right? No shot. The game immediately introduces you to future enemies and future areas that you're going to be exploring right off the bat. You may not know this, but you're going to be fighting this guy later on, and exploring this area, running errands for a crazy musician going through each of these shops.
In terms of visual metaphor, BioShock 2 doesn't have any. Okay, that's not true. There's one thing. So in the very first shot, the shape of your helmet overlaps with the shape of the girl dispenser to create a giant eye that, It's reminiscent of the book 1984, which the game references constantly later on.
Big sister is always watching.
Sure, it sort of works to set up the game's literary foundation, but this is supposed to be an emotionally charged scene between a father and his adopted daughter. What is this visual trying to say? Fellas, is it fascist to have a dad? It's a solid idea, but it lacks a cohesive vision, much like the rest of the intro.
BioShock's introduction checks all the boxes. It introduces to the narrative and characters, we get the soothing music, the allusions to the visuals, the thick, juicy atmosphere. It's a game that treats its audience like it's a part of something bigger, and it actively engages them by giving them some form of control.
BioShock 2's intro isn't bad, it just pales in comparison. It doesn't build tension nearly as well, and it doesn't use any meaningful symbolism. We get little insight into the game's themes, characters, and future locations. Instead, the developers place an emphasis on narrative efficiency, and ultimately it's to the game's detriment. If there was a correct way to follow up BioShock's masterpiece of an opening sequence, this wasn't it.